Hello, my fellow nerds. Um, Today, I wanted to give you an update on my Dungeons and Dragons first edition AD&D resources. Um, First up, I have an update on my character sheet database. But before I get into that, I received an email about my PDFs, my form fillable PDFs. Link will be below in the description here. Um, my PDFs, I automated them with JavaScript so that not only can you fill in the data yourself, but a lot of it you don't have to because the data is calculated. It calculates your saves for you, it calculates your attack rolls, etc. But I've run into a really weird quirk with the PDFs that I've never seen before, and it just won't stop. Um, So someone emails me and says a couple of the fields aren't calculating properly. And what's weird about it is every now and then that just happens. A field just stops working, even though I haven't modified these PDFs in months, I think. I can say months, yeah, certainly months, certainly at least 2 months. I haven't modified them, but if I open up now, all of a sudden the field doesn't work. Now, you would think that's a problem with the code, even though it still doesn't make sense that it spontaneously stops working when it was working before. But you assume that's a problem with the code. But all I have to do to fix it is I create a new field, reference the code, the functioning code, using the same calling format, and then delete the old field. And then the field works until it doesn't. It just stops working, and I haven't changed any settings on a field. I haven't changed the underlying code, but if I just reference the code from a brand new field, it works again until it just simply stops working. And it's random fields that just work or don't work. And I don't know if I've written so much JavaScript that it confuses the PDF file. I doubt it because I've seen a lot more JavaScript in a PDF than I created for these character sheets. So I don't know what's going on. So if anybody has any idea, has encountered that bug before, let me know. But I really, it's tedious having to fix that so often, all to have it go to hell when another field just decides to stop working or another few fields decide to stop working. So I don't think I'm going to be updating that anytime soon. Why? Because I'm working on something that's a little more reliable and a little better, and that is my database uh, character sheet. And it's also a campaign manager. Now, I've made some pretty good progress, but once you put something like that out into the wild, anyone who's done software development, which a lot of you nerds have, um, would understand this. Once you put it out in the wild, things pop up and you might say, "Ooh, I forgot to do that." If you don't go through a formal requirements analysis phase, which of course I didn't. This is just something I do in my free time. But you might have forgotten a feature, like my character sheet for my one of my players. It didn't have his non-weapon and weapon proficiencies on the character sheet. Oops, forgot to put that in there. You might have forgotten something, or you start using a new functionality and it doesn't quite work, or as you bring in more data, this is a problem that I'm about to face, I think. As you start entering more data into a particular set of tables, you realize that your searching function and how user friendly the front end is kind of gets weak. You realize it's not so friendly, and I haven't even tried to do much user friendliness, um, because I know how the underlying database works. And right now, I just want to get the functionality and the character sheet going. And but I do plan on eventually getting this to be something I could put out in the real world and let people use. Um, And so when I say I'm going to be facing this, I've already entered in all the data, all the monsters, all the encounters, etc., for Keep on the Borderlands. Well, we finished that in our last session. So now for June 10th, I believe, whatever the Saturday is around that date, that's our next session. And I have to have Secret of Bone Hill and Assassin's Knot entered in there. Well, at least I have to have Secret of Bone Hill entered in there. And that's module L1 for those who remember. Um, I need to have that entered for the next session, and that's going to mean that I've got multiple adventures in that area of the database, and whether or not the entry and being able to work with it is user friendly remains to be seen. Now that it's more complicated than just one adventure, I've got multiple adventures, and I need to be able to separate things. Um, and to an extent, I don't need that, but I kind of do because it speeds things up. If something's user friendly, it speeds me up, even though I'm very familiar with the back end and all the coding and what's going on. But I've made a lot of progress. The um, the character sheet, I just have to add a few things that I left off. I did a lot of that over the past couple days. Got just a few more things to do. I know that when I load in, if you play a drow, because under Unearthed Arcana, you can play a drow as a PC. If you play a drow, you get, for the PCs, you get a limited list of racial spells that you know, much like a gnome has racial spells. And I think they're wrong. Not that anybody's playing a drow in my game, but I want it fixed. And there are a couple other things I got to add in there. But it is coming along, and I think eventually I'm going to have something that I can put out there in the real world. And I don't have a high internet footprint. It's not likely to occur, but someone had asked me for the underlying data so that they could load it into their database and maybe work with it. And I lost their contact information, but the data is already entered to a large extent. Um, I still need to finish up entering Fiend Folio data into the monster tables, and then I have to finish up with Monster Manual 2. I just have a few of those monsters that are in there, but Monster Manual's done. Um, all the classes are there. I am going to add the Bard from Dragon Magazine that starts at first level. I'm going to add that eventually, um, and we'll see how it comes together. I don't have a timeline for this, but it's not like anybody's beating the door down trying to get this. Nobody's really bugging me for it, so it's just something that I want to be able to use for my home game, which is going, I think, pretty well now that we're back in the flow of things. We understand first edition again. I think everybody's kind of accepting of the rules, and we're rolling with it. It's going pretty well. Also, in the last session, I added an encounter to to Keep on the Borderlands because my characters skipped the lizard folk altogether. Didn't even mess with them. I just changed that whole thing, and I had the lizard folk be an army. So when they get back to the keep, they didn't investigate. I don't know. My players are idiots. They didn't investigate, even though I gave them hooks. And even though one of the players said, clearly the DM's given us a hook. Maybe we should go investigate. But they didn't investigate, so they wound up with a slight disadvantage. But they get back to the keep. The keep later that night gets attacked by the lizard folk. And so there's this mass battle. And I used my mass battle rules to deal with at least a couple of the characters, to deal with these characters for for dealing with the siege. And the mass battle rules really worked, and everybody had a fun time. Everybody loved it. Um, so you can go to my blog. I guess I'll put a link to those two posts to see my mass battle rules. But my rules have changed. So I need to do a third post to update those two, but you'll get the gist of it. It's based on how Risk handles combat, the board game Risk, but it pulls in your character. So if you're playing a wizard, you can manipulate the dice rolls in a certain way. If you play a thief, you can manipulate the dice rolls in a different way. Cleric, fighter, everybody's kind of got their own way of doing things. Although all fighters are together: barbarians, rangers, cavaliers, fighters, paladins, and then thieves, assassins, and thief acrobats. That they do their own thing collectively. So that's about it. That's just the update on that. And I got nothing else for you tonight. So happy gaming, everybody.